Hi again. Welcome to a little IndyCar special today. Often I'm accused of being a little bit negative about all the things I'm telling you on IndyCar during the day. Sometimes the news just isn't very good. And it's hard to find the positives in the daily news feeds that we get through the British media. So I thought today we'd have a look at the potential benefits of being a normal country again. What it would mean to Scotland to be in charge of its own affairs again, and to be able to do things the way we want to. So let's start with a few basics. The first thing is that the Scottish economy and the English economy are extremely different. One of the first things you'll notice that is that if you listen to English Tory politicians, particularly talking about Brexit and want it, it's mostly because they don't see any risk to themselves in Brexit, because their businesses, if they have any, are businesses which are to do with banking or investments, and therefore they have no actual risk to take because their companies deal with rich people's money, making them more money from manipulating the rich people's money. So they don't see any risk to themselves from it. Doesn't hurt them. They're all millionaires. They're fine. But the rest of us are not so lucky. And in Scotland, our economy is very much more mixed. Only about 30% of the Scottish economy is made up of the banking industry. The rest of it is made up of a mixture of things, including the internal economy, with things like food and drink, and the kind of products that we all use every day. And then there are things like pharmaceuticals, and there's engineering, and shipbuilding, and bus building, and so on and so on. A lot of different things, as well as the so-called iconic whisky industry. The iconic whisky industry, predominantly an export-driven industry, a bit like a lot of the other things that Scotland does. We export a great deal, especially food, beverages, and whisky. So our economy is going to be different right from the start, because it has to be. The values in the Scottish economy are different, because we don't see our economy as a way of simply making money for shareholders. That is the way the Tories see things. They see the bottom line. They see making money for more millionaires who invest in businesses that belong to other people in other parts of the world. So they take zero risk. They never make anything. They don't sell anything. They just simply move money around. And that money is moved into other people's businesses which make money and add value. I heard one Brexiteer boasting on the radio today that he was boasting about himself. He said, inside a year, I drove the share price of the company up by 12% or something like this. And I'm thinking, if that's the man's ambition for his country, it's to make money for his shareholders and himself. Really, that is the key difference between the English economy and ours. So what would a newly free Scotland look like, and what would be the differences between the reality that we see around us in Scotland in the future from what it is at the moment? The first thing we would notice is that all of the redundant riversides and the derelict docks that we see dotted around the country would suddenly be redeveloped in bustling places, because no longer would we have to export all of the goods through England and through their Channel Tunnel, because we simply wouldn't need to do that anymore. There would be no compulsion on us to do so. We could quite easily export our goods directly from whatever seaport was nearest to the manufacturing plant. So let's say the new whisky distillery, the Clydeside distillery down at Finnieston, the one that's just opened, the ship used to be, that very distillery, once it's been working for a while, sometime in the next 10 years, that whisky that's making the warehouse to ships right outside the distillery and taken wherever in the world it needs to go. So there is a great deal of scope for developing or redeveloping all of our seaports, even the small ones, because one of the great advantages to having a lot of coastline is that you can use water to transport things, particularly things like food and bulk goods which are needed everywhere, like building supplies, like gravel and cement and bricks and timber. The kind of things that you need normally to take by road to these rural places, much of that can be transported by sea. So that would be the first thing you would notice, that your seaports were being redeveloped, The container port that exists at the moment in Grangemouth would need to be expanded, Leith Docks would need to be expanded, Greenock would need to be expanded, a container terminal at Hunterston might need to be built instead of the current idea for a natural gas terminal, which would be a colossally bad idea when it comes to fossil fuels. And that brings me to the next thing, which is Scotland's ambition to become totally green and completely carbon zero by, what was it, 2035, I think is the target date at the moment. Now, to do that kind of thing requires vast amounts of money being invested into new infrastructure, including things like massive energy storage, batteries, and other ways of storing renewable energy for when we need it later. Because of the intermittent nature of wind, even offshore and onshore wind, we need a way of storing that energy so it can be used at any time when it's needed, rather than only when the wind is blowing. So there would be billions of pounds needing to be invested in that. Another aspect of this new green industry, and the fact that we would have full control over it, would be that we could insist that all multinational or national companies which operate in Scottish territory must pay the full rate of corporation tax. Everybody, there'll be no exceptions, no matter how big the company, oil companies, anyone. We can make sure that those taxes are paid, rather than the current system with the English government, which has basically been bought off by the big oil companies, and they're actually paying Shell and BP to take the oil away, rather than having them pay us for the oil that they're actually stealing. So we would see a big difference. The oil industry would still exist, obviously, because people will still need oil for a while to come before we finally wean ourselves off it, the rest of the world being somewhat behind us probably by this time. So that's another change that we would see. And because of the fact that we are going to convert from fossil fuels to green, rather than us fully robotising and automating every form of production that we have, as the current case with, shall we say, the more capitalist types of businesses, where everything's to do with money and nothing to do with human beings, we could go down a different route where we can reindustrialise the country, but actually employ people and train them to do jobs in this new green industry. Why robotise a business when the business is really there to make profits for the people who work inside the business? If you have a business that at the moment model is that the business exists and operates to make as much money as possible for 1% of the people involved in that business. If we change that model to be the business must exist to provide as much profit for every person who works in that business, then we have a completely different economy. An economy which is based on human beings and not individual wealthy or hyper wealthy individuals who want to become even more stupidly wealthy. So instead of the concentration of wealth being in the hands of a tiny minority of people, the wealth is much more evenly spread across the population. So people have more disposable income. They can afford to build houses themselves, perhaps. They can afford furnishings. They can afford white goods. They can even afford a few luxuries, maybe go on holiday. And when you can afford to do those things, not only do you have enough money to do that, but you also have more money to be taxed. And that tax can then be used to support the burgeoning health service. Now, the health service is not something which is just a money pit. The health service is basically the garage. It's the MOT for human beings. It's the way that human beings stay healthy. And if we want to be healthy and happy and lead a long, fulfilling life, then a health service is one of the key elements in a new country. So that health service needs to be central to the ambitions of the country, and also the people need to be central to the ambitions of the country, not the wealthy individuals who invest very large amounts of money and expect to get large amounts of money as well. So that's basically it for the moment. I will come back to these more positive things just shortly, but for the time being, just remember that a new Scotland is possible. Not only is it possible, but it's going to look very different from the one we have at the moment. And certainly our ambitions are vastly different from those of the United Kingdom. I have to go now, but I'll see you all later. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow before I go on holiday. Bye.